Every member of the Black conscious community always says that we must emancipate our minds from white mental slavery. But in order to emancipate our minds from white mental slavery, we must first learn how white oppressive forces perpetually keeps our minds mentally enslaved. In this video, that's the objective. I will teach you how they keep our minds mentally enslaved. And I never said that what I teach would be easy for everyone to understand and comprehend. I only said that it would be the Black liberating truth that you must learn in order to emancipate your mind from white mental slavery. And it won't be easy for some, but I promise that it will be worth it. Those who know must teach, African proverb. Most Black people now knows that the white society has whitewashed our history books to make themselves appear more significant throughout history than they truly in fact were, while making we Africans appear much lesser significant throughout history than we truly in fact were. The practice is called Orwellian propaganda. For those of you who don't know, Orwellian propaganda are societal conditions created and sustained by misinformation, distortion of facts, denial of truth, and even the manipulation of the past to falsely exalt Caucasians and to falsely marginalize Black people. White historians justify this unethical practice by saying that it's customary for conquerors to distort facts and rewrite histories to favor themselves. However, the true reason being done is much more self-serving of the white society. The true reason why they whitewashed history is because white social scientists theorizes that a people's future is predestined by the history they're taught to believe about themselves. According to their theory, an inspiring history is required to achieve an inspiring future because people reference their potential and future capabilities in relation to the history they're taught to believe about themselves. More specifically, people references those past positive information about their particular racial group to acquire a positive self-image and confidence that inspires their future. In a sense, the past can be treated essentially as a set of conditions that justify or encourage future goals. The true history of Caucasians does not bolster the collective self-image, nor does it inspire the future aspiration of their racial group. Therefore, the history we've been taught has been whitewashed to meet that objective. It has been intentionally whitewashed to make Caucasians appear more significant throughout history than they truly in fact were, thus inspiring the future aspiration of their racial group. While inspiring the future aspiration of only white students, the whitewashed curriculum is designed to impede the future aspiration of Black students by denying Black students of a racially affirming curriculum. When the oppressed are denied a racially affirming curriculum, this psychology conditions them to accept their subordinate status within a society dominated by the oppressors. This is the hidden true reason why the white-controlled educational system denies Black students of a fully Black racially affirming curriculum. Doing so subconsciously conditions Black students to grow up being more compliant with white dominance over our lives. This is the true reason why Black people are learning more Black racially affirming facts from each other than we do so from within our white governed schools. It conditions us to accept our subordinate status within the white dominant society. This is also the true reason why Black students are being miseducated to believe that our history began with slavery, because before slavery, our ancestors were uncivilized and illiterate, and therefore we have no significant history that predates slavery. This is, however, totally untrue. The hidden reality is that long before the Europeans invaded Africa, it was Africans that civilized Europe. All of Greece's original scholars received their formal education from African scholars. Africans introduced science, writing, math, and philosophy to Europeans. The world's oldest university, library, manuscript, encyclopedia, human prosthetic, mathematical tools, medical journals are all located in Africa. Africans invented the wheel, paper, the calendar, the concept of 24 hours in a day. Africans are the first to build in stone and the first to smelt metal. Furthermore, long before the Europeans invaded Africa, it was Africans that civilized Europe. This even included introducing the daily bath to Europeans. Queen Isabella of Spain bragged that she had only bathed twice in her whole life. Queen Elizabeth I claimed that she was the cleanest woman in all of Europe for reportedly bathing once a month. This non-bathing practice among Europeans only discontinued after being civilized by Africans. The history we've been taught has been whitewashed to falsely bolster the collective self-image and self-esteem of Caucasians at the expense of those of Africans. According to white social scientists, truth is not important for bolstering a people's collective self-image and for steering them towards an inspiring future. What's only important is what's perceived as true. This nefarious social practice is what's meant when white social science says those who control the past also controls the future. This is the hidden reason why white social scientists, white historians, and white propagandists have whitewashed their history books. It inspires their future aspiration. Now, I was really saying that most black people know that the white society has whitewashed our history books to make themselves appear more significant throughout history than they truly in fact were, while making we Africans appear more significant lesser than we truly in fact were. But in order to truly emancipate your mind from white mental slavery, you must learn how they whitewash the perception of reality to make themselves appear more significant than they truly in fact are, while making we Africans appear significantly lesser than we truly are. It is only by learning this social science tactic that your mind will be emancipated from white mental slavery. Your perception of reality is an elaborate white deception. Have you ever noticed that the results of virtually all health studies that we receive from white sources favor themselves over black people? Critically think. Can't you see just how cartoonishly unrealistic it actually is to have health studies results so one-sidedly favoring one racial group over another? In fact, think even further. Have you ever noticed that virtually all information that we receive from white sources favor themselves over black people? Can't you see just how cartoonishly unrealistic this scenario actually is? It's absurdly ridiculous. It's actually fraudulent propaganda that through repetition is designed to subliminally convey the myth that whites are inherently superior to blacks and are therefore supposed to rule over black people. All societies function based upon the narrative that are repetitively fed into the society. And as long as white people remains the ones that are exclusively writing all the narratives that are fed into our society, those narratives will always favor whites over blacks. It's actually a social science tactic that's essential for maintaining their white social dominance over black people. According to white social scientists, in order for a dominant population to maintain its position of social dominance over its subordinate population, the narratives fed into a society must exalt the dominant population above the subordinate population. To meet this objective, white propagandists systematically feed false narrative into society that perpetually exalts the image of white people and falsely negatively distorts and marginalizes the image of black people. Doing so creates false assumptions and social norms within the society that directly affect hiring, firing, promotions, and even criminal sentencing practices in ways that aids in maintaining white social dominance over black people. As I've already stated, all societies function based upon the narratives that are repetitively fed into society. It is a social science fact. Social science is one of the branches of science devoted to the study of human behavior, specifically how people interact with each other, behave, develop as a culture, and moves forward as a society. It's now being secretly used by white oppressive forces for maintaining white social dominance over black people. Furthermore, also according to white social scientists, people are inherently tribal and therefore do not normally accept the long-term dominance of other racial groups over their lives. People must be manipulated to do so. They determined a long time ago that by systematically feeding false narratives into the society that perpetually negatively distorts and marginalizes black people while falsely exalting themselves, they could instill a value system into the collective subconscious minds of black people that not only makes us more compliant with white dominance over our lives, but that can in fact make us even prefer it. It makes us prefer white dominance over our lives. The white society sits upon a throne of white exalting and black marginalizing lies. Your perception of reality has been shaped by those lies. So therefore, your perception of reality is an elaborate white deception created by a nefarious perception management system. Perception management is a propaganda technique that involves altering the public perception of reality to suit the objective of the dominant ruling class. It's an essential part of modern information warfare. Perception management systems are very effective because the public's perception of reality is not actually shaped based on facts nor reality. It's actually shaped by the narrative that are repetitively fed into a society. Therefore, the basic tool required for the distortion of the public perception of reality is to merely repeatedly feed false, distorted narratives into a society. The public at large will then begin functioning based upon the false narratives rather than the true reality. This is precisely what the white society has done for maintaining their white social dominance over black people. Because they control all the societal narrative, they therefore literally owns the perception of reality. They constantly and systematically feed false narratives into a society that distorts the perception of reality in ways that serves the system of white supremacy. It creates and sustains false assumptions within the society that affects hiring, firing, promotions, and even criminal sentencing practices in ways that aids in maintaining white social dominance over black people. It also manipulates many black people to perceive ourselves through a fraudulent, negative, marginalized identity that aids the white society in maintaining their social dominance over black people. White social scientists describes the nefarious practice as merely instilling a value system into the collective minds of black people that makes us adhere to the existing infrastructure and the authority of the white dominant society. It's how the white society now protects itself from massive unified black retribution. Because of this perception management system, your perception of reality is an elaborate white deception that's designed for maintaining white social dominance over black people. Case, point, and proof. The majority of you believes that most inventions that have revolutionized the world were made by Caucasians. Moreover, that black people are the leeches of society that haven't invented much throughout history. However, the hidden reality is in fact the opposite. Is in spite of cultural traumas wrought by the injustices of white racism and slavery, most inventions that have revolutionized the world were either in fact invented by black people or were directly inspired by early inventions by black people. This is a fact. Without black people, there would exist no internet, no cell phones. We wouldn't have cameras and microphones on our cell phones. We wouldn't have the accurate weather forecasting system. We wouldn't have the cataract laser removal. There would be no emails, no GPS, no hearing aids, no touch-tone phones, no caller ID, no home surveillance security system, no motorized vehicle, no home game cartridge, no steam engines, no traffic lights, no working light bulbs, no elevators, no skyscrapers, no air conditions, no modern color PC, no 3D movies, no central heating, no refrigerators, no helicopters, no washing machine, no lawnmowers, no dryers, no refrigerated trucks, no blood banks, no fiber optics, no nanotechnology, no female sanitary pads, no bathroom tissue holders, no pencil sharpeners, no lawnmowers. Through their perception management system, the white society had distorted reality and made black people appear to be the leech of society. However, the truth is the exact opposite. Most technologies that we routinely use, in fact, comes from the minds of black people. When a well-packaged web of lies has been sold gradually to the masses over generations, the truth will seem utterly ridiculous, and a speaker will sound like a raving lunatic. I assure you, I am not a lunatic. I research facts. A historical fact that's been withheld from our whitewash history books is that within 80 years following the abolishment of slavery, and in spite of receiving no reparation, and wrought by the cultural traumas caused by the continued injustice of racism following slavery, African Americans submitted 726 invention patent applications to the U.S. Patent Office. This isn't only extraordinary under those circumstances and so closely following slavery, but it also more than doubled the number of patents submitted by whites during the same period. Black people have in fact enriched nearly every aspect of the lives of every person on this planet through our many inventions. White people invented the patent office and have always used it to steal intellectual property rights from black people. In order for black inventors to get their inventions mass produced, they have to go before white companies. These companies acquire the right to these inventions and then places white faces in front of the technology. This scenario literally allows the white society to continue exploiting the intellectual genius of black people while maintaining the appearance that most inventions are coming from white people. Through this whitewashing practice, the collective self-esteem of the white masses has been falsely bolstered at the expense of the collective self-esteem of the black masses. White propaganda designers have also concealed the fact that most revolutionizing inventions comes from the minds of black people through their whitewash propaganda campaigns that falsely gives their racial group credit for inventions actually made by black people. Case, point, and proof. The white society miseducates us by teaching us that Thomas Edison is responsible for lighting up the world. However, the true fact are that after Thomas Edison patented his light bulbs, no companies purchased nor mass produced it. This is because it deemed not efficient enough. It lit very dimly, it lasted only a few minutes, and so no one purchased it. The inventor whose light bulb was purchased, mass produced, and that was spread around the world was invented by an African American named Lewis Latimer. He sold a patent to the U.S. Electric Company in 1881. He was also dispatched around the world to oversee his installation. Therefore, in reality, it was actually a black man that lit the entire world. Now, while it's Thomas Edison that was given the full credit for inventing the light bulb, that's merely a whitewashing of facts that falsely exalts whites at the expense of black people. It is a part of the perception management system I told you about. The true fact is that it was Lewis Latimer that lit up the entire world. Latimer literally wrote the book on electric. He holds the patent for the first electrical lamp, and he's also the man who drew the patent for Graham Bell's telephone. All these facts are hidden from you. The white society also miseducates us by teaching us that Henry Ford invented the first automobile. It was actually an African-American inventor and carriage company entrepreneur named Charles Richard Patterson that built the first automobile. The C.R. Patterson & Son Company started out as a carriage building firm in 1873. In the early 1900s, Patterson and his son converted the company from a carriage business into an automobile manufacturer. It was released in 1905 and sold for $850. It had a four-cylinder Continental engine. C.R. Patterson began making automobiles long before Henry Ford automobiles, and his was considered more sophisticated. C.R. Patterson and sons were forced out of business by Henry Ford in 1939, and he's not even in our history books. Therefore, there's even more that they hide from you. Do you know that the first successful open heart surgery on this planet was performed by a black surgeon within a black-owned hospital? His name was Dr. Daniel Hale William. He founded a Providence hospital and a training school for nurse. It was the first black-owned hospital in the United States in 1891, and he performed the first successful open-heart surgery in 1893. Following the surgery, white surgeons from around the world came to learn from Dr. Williams. Many white surgeons had attempted before, but all of their patients had died. Also, in 1940, Dr. Charles Drew, another African-American doctor, achieved yet another medical pioneering breakthrough. He invented the blood plasma system. And just like Dr. William had experienced earlier, he was traveling around the world. And in fact, white government officials had him establish a blood bank for the world. The oppressor's depiction of the oppressed is never a true one. It's always negatively distorted to serve the nefarious agendas of the oppressors. This has remained a consistent fact throughout history, and it's especially still true now, living under white dominance. The collective self-esteem of the white masses has been deliberately falsely bolstered at the expense of the collective self-esteem of the black masses. The governmental name assigned to this perception management system remains classified. However, many of us have appropriately named it the Black People's Matrix. Society functions based upon the narratives that are fed into it. People function based upon those narratives. This gives the white society a greatest power because they control the narratives that the world functions based upon. So they feed the world false narratives that empowers themselves. They feed the world false narratives that creates perceptions that benefit themselves. According to social scientists, perception is more important than reality for controlling people because people function based upon their perceptions of reality. So the white society feeds the world lies that create perceptions that empowers the white society. When I see black people speaking negatively about our race, the first thing on my mind, that's the most brainwashed among us. Black people who speak negatively are the most brainwashed among us. Because they sit there allowing the white society to tell them what to believe. They don't research facts themselves. As long as you are getting your information about your people from your enemy, you will always be misinformed. You will always, because they will always feed you lies that makes you believe you're less than them. You have to learn the social science. The white societies uses information warfare. They use information warfare and they spread their propaganda around the world. This is what Marcus Garvey said. He said the white man's propaganda has made him the master, and all who accepts his propaganda becomes his mental slave. To free your mind from mental slavery, you have to learn how your enemy is keeping you brainwashed. The brainwashing is reapplied every day through propaganda campaigns. When you're constantly hearing that, when you turn your TV on and keep seeing these negative narratives, study shows black people this, study shows white people this, study shows black people this, that affects you on a subliminal level. It makes you feel less about being black, and you start to look up at white people. They use the media to propagate our minds, to manipulate our minds. If you're walking around saying it's Willie Lynch, you are a goddamn fool. And your ignorance keeps you mentally enslaved. It is the white society's ongoing monopoly over our minds. It's time to wake up to our reality. The time of believing in dumb shit is over. And those of you who are waiting for, we're the people in the Bible who say God's going to come and get us, Jesus is going to save us, you have been looking at facts. The African Americans have now been in this country more than 400 years. If the story of Deuteronomy 28 was talking about us, according to that, Exodus should have happened in 2019. It hasn't happened because the Bible is a work of fiction written by our most ungodliest enemies. We must function based upon reality in order to liberate ourselves. One love and peace.